and welcome to another episode of Stream It Live. I'm your host, Tony Kipkemboi, and I work on developer relations at Streamlit. In today's episode, we're talking about how AI is reshaping government operations, the challenges of ethical AI implementation, and the future of technology in the federal sector. And joining us in this conversation today is Kevin Tupper. He's a seasoned federal Gen AI evangelist at Microsoft. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to Stream It Live show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So usually, the focus that we usually have in these sessions are usually AI, data topics, which is great. And it's something that you bring on today as well. But this is the first time we have a federal, somebody to talk about the federal sector, especially what they're doing in the AI space. So excited to have you on. But before we get started, let's start by getting to know you first. So can you share a bit about yourself and what drew you to specialize in AI, especially in the federal sector?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Actually, I kind of fell into it, to be quite candid. So I most of my background is in the small startup space as a data and AI professional CTO as well through some companies. And my neighbor had quite a lot of experience in Microsoft. And one afternoon he came over and said, "Hey, when are you going to stop messing around with these little startups and come work for a real company?"
Nice.
So 2017 came around and they made their big move into cloud. And he said, "Hey, we're hiring. If you're interested, now's your chance." So I threw my hat in the ring, and it just so happened to be in federal. I wasn't necessarily looking for the federal space. To be quite candid, it wasn't particular of interest to me, but that's where he was working, and so that's where I got hired. And I'm quite thankful to be totally honest, because it's some of the most challenging problems that the federal government is the largest enterprise in the country, of course.
Yes.
With some of the most challenging technical problems as well, and some of the most dedicated public servants who are committed to their specific missions, depending on where they are in their agencies. And so it's been a great place to work for the last 6 years.
Oh, amazing! It's good to hear like how you've navigated that. Started with startups as an operator, and then just kind of moving all the way to the federal government, which, as you mentioned, is the biggest client, really. So it's great to see that some of this action is happening actually in the federal space as well. So most people, probably that are listening to this, they've probably heard of Microsoft CoPilot, and but maybe they're not entirely aware or familiar with what it is exactly, because there's so many Copilots out there. But so can you tell us a bit about what it is?
So yeah, CoPilot. Well, I would imagine most people saw the Super Bowl ads with CoPilot, right?
Yeah.
Those are that's probably the introduction of CoPilot to a lot of people. And I won't say that Microsoft is the greatest branding company in the world. CoPilot, if we're all, this is a developer audience, so get the reference. CoPilot is a term that is completely overloaded. And so it really depends on what you're talking about. I think of CoPilot, it almost needs its own Wikipedia disambiguation page.
Yes.
Because when we have to talk about it with customers now quite often, and everybody thinks CoPilot, when we say Microsoft CoPilot is basically what Bing Chat was. So if you go to Bing/chat, or if you go to copilot.microsoft.com, you're more or less looking at a free version, if you're using it in the public, a free version of something like ChatGPT, where it lets you have conversations and issue prompts and includes web search and some things like that. But then we have Copilots for every single one of our product suites. In fact, you can imagine it's going to be coming into every platform that Microsoft releases, a Copilot. For security Copilot, there's an Azure Copilot. So if you're in Azure now, you can have a Copilot sitting in that. We have Copilot for Microsoft 365, which sits alongside of your Word and Office suite tools, those sorts of things. So the way I like to describe Copilots they're basically assistants or AI agents that sit alongside another application. With contextual knowledge of that application and its particular goals and workloads, so that you can have an AI assistant that supports you, depending on whoever's developed that specific Copilot. Hopefully that disambiguates it a little bit. So an Azure, for instance, an Azure Copilot would know about your Azure cloud environment, what resources you're using, how to do stuff. GitHub CoPilot, obviously that's the granddaddy of them all, so to speak. A few years old, sits inside of VS Code or in your GitHub portal when you're running on GitHub, and you can basically chat with your code repository or the code that you're working on, and so forth. So hopefully that helps differentiate those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for breaking that down a little bit and putting some color to it, because I think a lot of people get that confused. Me as well at some point, But so there's a lot of predictions right now, and I'm one of them. I think AI agents are the next frontier in AI, and people like Andrew Ng have been talking about this quite consistently in the recent past. And so Microsoft has Semantic Kernel, which is an open source SDK that allows developers to build these agents. So, what is the difference between the agents and copilots that you just talked about?
Yeah, well, first let me say this: these terms are still emerging, right? There's no standards in this world, in this AI world yet, as everything is emerging fast and furious, so to speak. So you're going to likely get different answers from different people. As I mentioned, to me, Copilot is a generic term for any application where you have an orchestrator assistant, let's call it that sits on top, side by side with your application, and informs you as a user about what's going on, or makes offerings per se in terms of how I can help you do this or help you do that. But to me, like, the Copilot idea is a framework, is an orchestrator, where a specific assistant, particularly as we've seen these starting to emerge, an agent or an assistant, those terms are kind of synonymous. They have tools and skills available to them. To me, those are much more domain specific than the overall Copilot. So I might have an assistant that is skilled with sending and reviewing email. That's part of a Outlook Copilot, right? So it's the assistant is more of a sub function with specific skills. A lot of organizations, OpenAI, Microsoft has it with Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Copilot, are developing these large copilots, and they're made up of agents. But right now, my view of it in this space, and it may change later as the AI becomes more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Right now, the more you can narrow down the domain for an agent of where it needs to function, what its guardrails are, what it's allowed to do, and what specific tools that it can use, the more functional the agent can become, or more precise it can become at doing what it's supposed to do. And the broader you make it, and the more wide open you make a top-level agent that's trying to do everything, the more complex it is, the more ambiguity in the problem space, the harder it's going to be for the agent to actually deliver. So you can imagine, like, if I went up to an AI and said, hey, I want you to go, I gave it a list of 20 different things, all different tasks. That's going to be a pretty difficult problem for one AI agent to solve. But if I said, okay, this is my email agent, hey, draft an email on this topic and send it to this person, that's pretty low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the money on those sentiments, and I've been playing around with it a little bit as well. And I think I've observed the same things that you mentioned. I've tried implementing more of multi-agent systems as well, and I found that starting with a very simple process that you wanted to run, it's probably the best way, and then kind of scale it, and then probably connect all those individual pieces together and build like one giant agent. But yeah, this space is still evolving, and excited to see that you're also keyed in on that aspect as well. So we're transitioning now to the demo. I know you have a really cool demo for us, a Streamlit demo. So let's get to it.
Sure. So I'm going to caveat this with a real. I am not an engineer. Tony, you and I talked about that. I'm a technologist. Yeah. My specialty is on applying technology to problems. So one of the things that we do with customers, this might not look like a Streamlit application to most of you, but it is. Somewhat it probably does, because you recognize the JSON payload. And I'll share the code later to this, but I basically wanted to be able to showcase semantic kernel and how to use it. Like, how do I call a semantic kernel from within Streamlit? And then how do I show side-by-side models So in this particular case, I'm using semantic kernel, and I've loaded 4 different chat services. I've loaded GPT-4 Turbo, which is what we call at Microsoft to our federal customers. This is the hero model. I mean, this is the absolute, still, in my view, the best functional model on the market today. And then GPT-3.5, which is a little bit less functional. And then most of you have heard about 5.3, likely, that's been announced by Microsoft as a small language model, and the mixture of experts model, or Mistral. So it's a mixture of experts. And so all I do, and most of you are familiar with Streamlet's got the great chat application. So all I've done is basically put 2 columns where I can choose a chat service, which ones I want to compare. And so in this particular case, I'm comparing, say, GPT-4 Turbo and 5.3 Instruct. And I've got one chat interface, and I have 2 actual conversation histories that I'm keeping track of. So it's each one has the same conversation history relevant to its own responses. So if I came into here and say, tell me about DHS, I can very quickly get a response from both. And what you'll see is even though 5.3 is probably a smaller language model and running locally, the latency on GPT-3.5, because it's running in Azure in the cloud, is a little bit more performant. Not a bad answer, though. You can look at the answers for this, and I share all the code with this, so anybody that wants to develop this and look at the answers themselves can do so. But it has all the answers and continues to run both side by side. So you saw it was faster coming out of the gate for GPT-3.5, but 5 finished earlier, just because it was already queued up locally. And so anybody who's run models, I'm using Ollama to run the service locally, and I've got a reasonable desktop. I've got a NVIDIA card in there, so I'm assuming Ollama is using the single GPU on that NVIDIA card. And it's not bad, it's functional, but I can use this side by side to very quickly show customers the difference between kinds of models. I like to use it when I'm showing agents too, specifically. For instance, so if I were going to use it for an agent or an assistant, I might say something, give me an outline in JSON format for a paper on the Ukraine-Russian conflict, or something like that. And just see how would it analyze it, the model analyze it. Now you saw that's just like the latency on this it's done, right? GPT-3.5 is much smaller. So this gives people an idea to see, these are both running in the cloud. It lets people see very quickly both the quality, because you will absolutely see better quality and understanding of the problem coming from GPT-4, but there's a cost, right? The latency is there as well. So so that's my demo. This will keep running here until it's done. But you see it just like that, give you the good quality output of a GPT-3, and you can do all sorts of things with that. I've shared the code with it at my GitHub repo, so it's github.com/Kevin_Tupper/sk-streamlet demo. I'm just going to ask your audience. I know your audience is a developer audience. Go easy on me. This is not, writing code is not something I do for a living. At least hasn't been in 20 plus years. But most of this code was actually created with GPT, Azure OpenAI's GPT-4 model, and me going back and forth. So it's not too bad to look at, but it just shows how to use Streamlet with semantic kernel. And I've got in there links to, I think you saw with, what is semantic kernel and how does it work and all that. So feel free, anybody can use it. Nothing in there that you can that's preventing anybody from using it for any reason. There's nothing real earth-shaking in there.
All right. Pretty cool demo. And to give yourself some credit, I think you're doing a pretty good job with just kind of creating the code itself and the stuff. Even using GPT model to be able to generate that code. I think you really did an amazing job with prompting, which goes to show that you need to understand what you're trying to build to be able to for these models to help you build something really cool. So yeah.
The thing that was for me that was actually the coolest in that demo, from my view, was not that you can do streaming of responses. It was bringing an asynchronous programming model to Streamlit, which it's not natively asynchronous.
Yes.
And so the semantic kernel SDK is all asynchronous. And so I found somebody, and I can't give credit to him. I'm sorry because I don't know his name, but he posted the very basics of a call to call the model asynchronously in Streamlit. And I was like, oh, thank you. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And then I was off and running because I didn't know how to do that in, coding wise in Streamlit. And so he posted it. And that's nice because then I can run both of them side by side and gather the outputs, which is nice, as opposed to running one and then run the other, which doesn't give you a real sense of the comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the power of open source. You went and you saw something, you built it, and now you're open sourcing it again for the community to benefit from. And I agree with you. That's really some really cool part that I found about the app as well, is just being able to run those models together synchronously. So pretty cool. And so kind of diving into some of these concepts a little deeper. So with your experience, extensive experience at Microsoft and at startups as well, how do you approach educating federal agencies about the benefits and challenges of implementing AI?
Show more than tell. So, particularly for people that are normally risk averse, and they should be, right? There's reason to be, to open their eyes, have an epiphany, if you want to say that term, to show the power and the possibilities of what's available is the first key. There's a lot of great content, so I do quite a bit of curation, and it's rapidly emerging. So to educate, it's something that they have to do more than what they have to understand. Meaning, I want to help agencies set up sandboxes where they're not dealing with mission critical workloads right up front, right? So it's something you have to ease into and have to get used to using. It's a muscle. You've probably heard some people say education in AI is less about learning facts and more about experiencing how it's used. Some people like to use the gym analogy. You don't get fit by learning about exercise. You get fit by going to the gym and exercising.
Yes.
I like to, my way of thinking about it is reading. You don't become a better reader by learning more about how a C sounds, or you become a better reader by reading. People who are the best readers read a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it applies to almost everything. You just have to do it to get better at it. But yeah, that's pretty good to know that. So you've also, you've spoken about transformative potential of generative AI quite a lot. So could you give us some practical examples of maybe how these technologies currently being used in government operations in some of these agencies?
Well, I can't speak for specific agencies without permission. So they're rightly sensitive about that. I can give you some examples for sure. Just generically, think about how many agencies have public-facing phone numbers where people call in and get help for something, right? So that almost all of those calls are recorded. So the first step might be taking AI and transcribing those calls, and then analyzing them, classifying them into the types of problems, so that they know, okay, this is a help desk ticket on this kind of problem set. This is an issue with filling out a form. This is, break those down. And then you can use those understanding of the transcripts to then potentially start to develop systems that help we can talk about RAG or other sorts of applications that then will help user agents, people who not AI agents, but people who actually answer the calls, help them more quickly navigate to the right information and give their accurate responses to the citizen's problem or question, right? And then maybe later on, walk, crawl, walk, run sort of thing. Then maybe you have an AI agent once it becomes more acceptable and we have all the guardrails in place and all the compliance requirements and the use cases right.
Yep.
Maybe you have an AI agent answering the telephone, announcing itself as an AI agent, understanding the problem, handling, say, 70% of the calls that are low risk, easy to answer, solved problems, right? And then routing to a human operator, some that might require more nuance or more cognitive functioning, so that a human is answering those. So you can think about that as a typical problem over time, right? And all of that will end up reducing strain on the system. We basically are having a world where we're having the citizens appropriately demanding more responsive government, a more consistent government, because we all know that we can call 3 different agents and get different answers for different problems. So that could be an example. A CoPilot example that we're looking at a number of places. There's lots of agencies where the public has to fill out forms. Can you imagine on the form online allowing you to fill out the form and having a CoPilot sitting by, knowing where you are in the form, and if you're properly authenticated and you're having a government record, maybe it actually helps you or advises. So those are all, and that's just 2 simple solutions. There's many other use cases that I know agencies are considering and looking at, particularly because of the volume of data that they have to get through, and the scale of the problem versus the scale of the ability to solve the problem.
Yeah. And so that kind of drives into my next question, which I know you touched a little bit about RAG, but, other than fine tuning, of course, RAG is arguably one of the best ways to augment LLMs with new knowledge and that they weren't trained on, of course. So is RAG a popular choice? Are you seeing it as a popular choice within the federal sector as well?
Yeah, we actually are recommending almost all agencies start with like a sandbox, and we have a RAG solution. Hopefully you have a link for it, aka.infoassist, aka.ms/infoassist. And it's a public open source solution that we're helping agencies get started with. I see the link. You've got it, bit.ly Infoassist. Yes. Nice.
Yes.
So we help agencies stand that up, and just, again, a sandbox, it's not a production workload, but it's a sandbox to understand how RAG works and solve those problems, because that's the first solution. What we're finding, though, by the way, this is a government problem, right? There's so many, from Llama Index to LangChain, so many people publish repos. Oh, here's how you do RAG on this. Here's how you do RAG on that.
Yeah.
And they're used to doing it with 100 documents in a small area with each document being unique.
Yeah.
That's not a government use case. Government would be 10,000 documents, 70 of the same version and multiple of them with iterations, and the data governance hasn't been set up yet to know who has access to which ones yet, right? Not in every use case, but that's the kind of thing that has to happen in government. So I said, some of the harder problems to solve at an enterprise scale that most people are just simply not used to working with. That's
quite enlightening, just because you wouldn't think of, it makes sense in hindsight that, government has all this more repetitive documents within different agencies. And like you mentioned, those are big challenges to solve within that space. And I think, it's a great thing to be working on to improve that as, citizens, to get better services as well that way. And so that also kind of leads to the next topic that we want to talk about, which is jobs within the federal sector, especially AI jobs. So are you seeing kind of like a high demand, like it's already is on the private sector?
Yeah, I would say yes. So particularly for skilled professionals, like if you've ever considered working in the public sector and for public service, there's absolutely significant amount of hiring going on from multiple agencies with AI, skilled professionals that can come in and, I can't speak to GS levels, but I know they're high. So you're not coming in at a ground level necessarily. So if you're an AI professional with skills and you get validated skills, there's certainly lots of opportunity to work in the federal government to solve some of these problems and help agencies move forward, as well as I would imagine. Well, I know for sure a lot of government contractors are also hiring professionals as well, and you'd be surprised. The benefits are pretty good. Well, they're actually really good, and the pay is I would say relatively commensurate to a lot of places in the industry. They don't match the super high tech places. But they do match, industry for sure. And more importantly, you are serving your country and solving some of the most difficult, like I said, the most difficult challenges that enterprises face.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably one of the places where you'll tackle some really interesting problems that you've touched on a little bit of them there. And so we also have a link there for USA Jobs. That would be the place if you're looking for roles within the government. That's definitely a place for you to get started and check out some of those AI roles there and apply. And so just kind of to close this out as well, do you have any advice for maybe those that are seeking these roles in the public sector or trying to transition to the public sector?
Be patient. It's not, when and I've been through hiring at a small startup. I meet with the owner. Yeah, hey, great, awesome, come work for us. To say a mid-sized company, to a Microsoft. The larger the enterprise, sometimes the longer the process takes, and also your background check and stuff like that at government. You'll be vetted enough
before you join. Yeah, that's awesome. That reminds me of my time in the Army. We had this quite popular saying. Whenever we're doing anything, it would be, hurry up and wait. So you hurry up to get where you're going, but then you wait for like hours before you actually get to that event.
Similar,
yeah. Pretty cool. And so given the the rapid pace of how things are moving with this AI industry and developments, it feels like there's something coming out every day. Even right now, OpenAI is doing some announcements. We don't know what it is, but it's potentially a big thing as well. So how do you keep up with these latest advancements? How do you keep updated with the knowledge and to be able to share it with other folks that you're working with, our clients as well?
I don't. I can't. I've been really fortunate. I shifted my role in Microsoft slightly before OpenAI came out with GPT. GPT-3 and ChatGPT. Just before it came out, maybe a few months before, I've been working with just AI, and so I've been able to focus on all of it. So I've seen the basically, it's you could call it, you could use, I don't want to use devastating terms like tsunami, but just a massive wave of increase. From 50 people are talking about it to I have 500 things coming in my news feeds every day. At one point I tried to keep up with it all, and then I just realized I can't. So I have to, I focus really keenly on the foundation things. I have 3 or 4 people that I know are cutting edge, who, if it's important, they're going to talk about it, who I follow. And I don't want to reveal those sources yet.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I have my own AI assistants that I've created that helps me filter through content, and then knows I have my own little scan, my radar that says, hey, is this important to me or is it not important to me? And part of it was the problem, Tony, as you know. Let's say there's a new technique that comes out in RAG. If you scan the whole world, you're going to see that technique 17 different places, because there's so many people making noise in this space.
Yeah.
You don't have time to look at each one of those. If it takes a minute in each one of those 17 places, you've wasted 17 minutes just looking to think, well, that's the same article. Oh, that's the same article. And most of us in this space have some sense of FOMO, or we're afraid we're going to miss the next greatest technique. So I use a little AI filter that I've been working on to create a scan to say, have I seen this before? Is this new information or is it not? And if it's not new, then I don't need to. I don't have to check it. So I have a filter that helps me get through that.
Wow, that sounds very useful and much needed by most of us, really, because there's a lot of noise out there, and very you have to parse through to find some signal. So I think that's a pretty good takeaway there.
I'll share one more thing for your audience, which might be helpful if I have time.
Yes, please.
So this is something I'm working on. I haven't got it refined yet, but I've strategically started thinking about what do I want, where do I want to impact in terms of my role, what I do, how do I help the government? And for me, it's all about how do I help the government embrace and move into this era, this AI era, and how do I help the public do that together? And so as I have opportunities, I have, we can delegate, we can defer, we can delete, or we can do. Those are my 4 Ds.
Nice.
So I've defined I've used AI, and I use AI to help me now. I have my workload of things that people have invited me to, because you can imagine we get invited, as you do, to get to speak or to talk or to work on a project all over the place. And so I've defined what do I want to accomplish, like what are the Kevin's core impact goals, and then those 4 Ds, and say, okay, look at this, look at my calendar of what's coming up next. And then tell me, is this something I need to delegate? Is this something I need to delete? Is this something I need to defer, like push it out, or do right now? And so I'm just starting to get that work done on my own bot. So my own GPT version to help me do that.
Nice, quite fascinating. You're using AI to help you with AI stuff, so it's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's the way I can scale.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. You should share that once you have that going and working really good for you. I'm guessing you're using CoPilots, a little bit portion of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just to close out, where can the audience learn more about your work and some of the stuff that you're doing currently?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share. Like when I have that done, I'll probably share it publicly. That little thing. So LinkedIn, Kevin Tupper for sure. And then I'm hoping to build out a site. It's still in incubation on pubsec.ai, which will be, that's not a Microsoft project. That's an independent project where I'll share and help people understand more about the public sector and AI, particularly for people in the public sector.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on today. This was really awesome and enlightening session. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks. I appreciate the time.
All right. Awesome. And so thank you all as well, our viewers. Thank you for tuning in this episode. Don't forget to follow us on social media to catch all our updates and future episodes. And with that, see you next time, and happy streaming. Bye-bye.